Hey, welcome back for lesson 4, how to build a practice routine. All right, and today we're going to cover basically how to set up a routine, what kind of elements you want in there, ideally also versus in reality, how to get kids to practice more systematically and purposefully, and kind of shift that around whatever academic options you're looking at too. And then last up, have a general sense of what those academic options are. To make sure you know what's out there, what's available. All right, first up, getting started. Who is in charge of running a day-to-day practice? Well, you might have 3 or 4 League of Legends teams, a couple Overwatch teams. You might have some Rocket League starting up. You might even be sponsoring some other games. And there's always a couple kids too that need a ton of your attention. So there is no way that you're going to be able to micromanage each of these teams, never mind each of your players. A lot of the established teams around here have like 60 plus kids, sometimes like 120 kids, one mentor. So there's no way, again, you're going to be able to like micromanage this. What's more is that a lot of us have, some background experience gaming, but it might be on older titles. It might not be on the current thing that's popular at the esports kind of scene level. So, how do you get kids to follow a routine once you've set it up without having to micromanage them? Good news is that they are highly motivated to get in that game client and play. They love the fact that they're able to do that at school. So, what you can do is you can use this as the carrot to try to motivate them. You might consider using Game Lock or Go Guardian or something like that too, some kind of a screen lock feature if you have that available. What you need to do is make sure that all your critical practice elements happen before and after those game sessions and that kids are following your basic instructions on this and kind of get to habituate that where you don't even have to manage it too much. What do you do about that one kid that's already in the computer lab before the bell's even rung, has the game client booted up and has jumped in game already? First of all, that kid might have an addiction. Should probably talk about that. Second, that kid might be one of the ones with lower self control, might be dealing with a bunch of other issues at the same time too. Probably stop and talk about that. But basically, good news is that that guy's going to be the exception to the rule. Most of your kids will respect the boundaries you set and do the things you ask, especially when they know there will be game time sometime during that session. So, ideally, my practice sessions would involve all of these elements. They would involve an academic and a career component. They would involve some kind of wellness or fitness. They would involve a warm up and a cool down. I'd also make sure that there's scouting, using statistics, setting goals, researching strategies and builds, and even reviewing VODs from previous gameplay. By the way, it turns out you shouldn't watch the VOD right after you've played. VOD, by the way, it stands for video on demand. We'll talk about that more later. You shouldn't watch it right after you've played. You should watch it before the next session so that you're in a place to take action on it, since you're also watching it a lot less emotionally invested. So just FYI. You might also have to kind of run the day-to-day affairs of the club, which could include fundraisers or recruiting or whatever else. If you have an agenda from week to week, and I think I provided a template for that. And then last up, and of course not least, is the gameplay itself. So if you look at the schedule I've got here, I've got about 90 minutes available to me. We usually run a little late, but we try to get out of there by 4:15. Got to go pick up my kids. And ideally, they'd be playing one good solid game and doing all these other elements. Now, that's a whole lot of stuff, though. So here's a more realistic look at things. More realistically, got to simplify down a little bit, and you might end up spending a little more time on gameplay itself. But it's important not to skip the warm up, cool down, stats, analysis, review. All of that makes it kind of purposeful practice where they're deliberately trying to get better and not just playing the game. And you also need either a wellness or academic component each week. I would kind of like suggest alternating off between the two if you're on a tight schedule like mine. Now, what this also means is that with a tight schedule like this, a lot of your day to day affairs are offloaded. So you might be letting most of your club jump in game and then pulling out a small group to work on some streaming session, or pulling out another group who are seniors who need to be applying for scholarships, or pulling out another group who are coordinating the guest speaker or event, or working on a strategy or coaching session with some small group of kids. So when you see that yellow box there of 55 minutes of gameplay, on one hand, it's super fun to jump in the game with the kids and play alongside them. I do that quite a bit. On the other hand, that might be a good time for a pull-out session where you get into some more nitty-gritty stuff. But for your general, like run-of-the-mill member, hopefully this is what their day looks like. All right, some critical components. No matter how you schedule your practices, there are a couple of things that you need to keep in mind. The first is that we're not promoting just random playing of video games. That's not the point of esports. Esports is about improving as an athlete. It's about setting a goal, using statistics and analysis and review, doing some reflection, and then adjusting to try to hit that goal, or if you met it, to set a new one, to continually and purposefully practice to improve. And on one hand, the kids need a large quantity of both gameplay. They need to put in the time to make sure that they're ranked up, well versed on all the different champions or whatever. Gameplay does make them better, just sheer gameplay. But we want to coach them on doing so with a high quality, not just with quantity, and making sure that the time they spend is efficient. Second thing that they need to keep in mind is that they're no longer solo queue players. They're not playing for themselves anymore. They're playing for their team. And they have to go through a perspective change. One thing that they need to think about is that they shouldn't just pick their best champion or their most comfortable champion. They should look at kind of a synergistic team composition. There's actually some research on this. They should also look at team-oriented objectives. Roaming the map just to place down some vision control and make sure you've got like your allies protected. That's actually got a high payout in team play, but a lower payout in solo play. And so incentivizing and changing those behaviors is going to be tricky. And last up, with a team, you guys can drill. You can rehearse pre-made moves or pre-made game plans that are a lot more complicated than anything you can pull off in solo queue. And we all know best laid plans never survive contact with the enemy. Nevertheless, you can do crazier stuff with a team than you can individually just by coordinating and having a better mutual understanding and better communication. Now, what's weird is that some of my best players are also the ones with the most experience in solo queue, and this generates entrenched mindsets and entrenched habits. And so actually some of the new players are playing a lot more innovatively as a team than some of my older players are. They tend to stick to their ways. So that's a hard thing to break, those habits. Last up, any part of practice, kids should be aware of their own psychology and how it's affecting their gameplay. So one thing that we're reading is a book called Inner Game of Tennis. It's all about how to keep focus through long, extended, intense duration matches. And the focus should be predominantly like reflexive muscle memory level focus, whereas the cognitive aspects of things should kind of be in the background. They should be thinking at a high strategic level, but they should also kind of be in the moment, in the zone. And so that's kind of that balance between reflexive and conscious thought. And then they should be aware of themselves. They should know if their performance is starting to dip. They should understand what their fatigue level is, if they're stressed out, if they're tilted, if they're anxious, and they should have some active methods for managing that. They should know that they're going to need to take breaks in between each match. And last up, they should have a clear understanding of how their communication is being perceived by their teammates. First of all, are they communicating? Let's get back to the basics. Are they communicating or not? A lot of times my teams are silent. They are starting to become more self-aware of this, that they need to be communicating, and they're deliberately practicing that. That's awesome. Secondly, though, when they start to lose or get frustrated, how they're communicating, they may be communicating the exact correct thing for the other player, like information that's both important and factual and correct, but the way they're delivering the message is sometimes counterproductive. That's something to think about there. All right, now building in curriculum, you've got quite a few options. One option is, what I'm working with is just a book club format. So I've selected Sun Tzu's Art of War for the first semester, the Inner Game of Tennis for the second semester. I think we're also going to be looking at Ender's Game for the third semester. And so that's awesome. HSEL also offers a curriculum based around 81 different 60-minute lesson plans. They cover a ton of themes. But the biggest player here is NASEF, and they have a 4-year A through G approved, UC approved A through G ELA curriculum. They're running it in a bunch of schools down in Los Angeles and Orange County for the most part. They also have 3-year CTE curriculum in development. They have a middle school curriculum, which is loosely tied to the after-school club curriculum too, which is something I'm working on. These will all be available if you're a NASEF member. They're currently about 2/3 of the way done for some of the expanded and newer curriculums. I'm part of a team that's working on that. You have a whole bunch of curriculum options. Some of these take place during the school day. Obviously, these two do. This one as well. Some of these are designed for the after-school scene too, and you could run that with a varsity sports program or a club program. The ELA curriculum, I've had a chance to check it out. It's awesome. It does all the normal things English and language arts should do, but it uses games and gamification as a hook. It goes through some pretty high-level books, and one thing that I really liked about it too is it looks at the industrial side of things. how to get into esports as a business, not necessarily as a professional player, how to market and set up and host events. That's awesome. The CTE curriculum, some of them are designed around game design and programming. And then again, some of those are more in the business marketing and hosting side of things. All right. So hopefully you understand who on your team will be managing your daily routine. It is not you. It can't be. Hopefully you have a strong sense of what should go into that routine so that kids are developing their skills in a purposeful way. And then last up, hopefully you have an idea that there are curriculum out there, either through HSEL, through NASEF, or through something you create. I'll try to make sure I get my curriculum linked out to you guys. And again, if you're a NASEF member, there's a bunch of options available there. Those will also be linked in the references and, of course, on the webpage. All right. Hopefully that helped out a lot, and I'll see you guys again in just a bit here.